at a much deeper level, I'm scared for a society that doesn't come together. And this is where retail plays a role. We need a device to bring us together, because we could go to parks and mountains and lakes, but that's a passive experience. We need active engagement with other human beings, not just animals or trees and rivers. We need engagement with people from different walks. That's going to be what is the foundation of making us a better society and a friendlier, deeper, more humane society. We need to kind of put down the Twitter sometimes and just get out and interact with somebody different.
Hey, Carl, how's it going, brother?
Going very well, Shawn. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. How you doing, sir?
Doing good, man. October 1st, start of Q4 2021. It's been going really good. So we're here. We keep the party going, man. Overall, I'm happy, brother.
Yeah. Today I put on the sweater. For those who are watching visually, today I have a sweater. It's the first sweater day. But Shawn, I have to admit, we had a pretty good summer. So this is the first time we put on a sweater. So that should give you an indication of what our summer is like.
Agreed. Not too hot and not too cold. It was just perfect over the summer. A lot of good outdoor activities, a lot of bike riding for sure this summer, and nature walks and things like that. So, and of course to our audience too. So welcome back, folks, to a brand new episode of As Is To Be. I'm your co-host, Shawn.
And I'm your co-host, Reid. I go by Creed.
You know how we do on As Is To Be. We like to unpack and unplug transformation, be it in our personal lives, in our professional lives, any change or evolution that people are going through their lives. And today we brought in a super special guest. I'd like to introduce everyone to Ervin Kelley. Hey, Kevin.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Our pleasure. Thanks for joining us today. Let me take a minute to tell you all about Kevin. So Ervin Kelley, he's an architect and a co-founder of Shook Kelley, which has offices in Charlotte and Los Angeles. Shook Kelley is a strategy and a design firm that studies how environments affect behavior. Really cool stuff. The firm's client list is stacked with well-known brands such as Harley-Davidson, Whole Foods, Kraft, Coca-Cola, Smucker, NFL teams, and the Cleveland Orchestra, and much, much more. Kevin is also a thought leader. He's taught at both the University of North Carolina as well as Harvard University. He's based in Los Angeles, and he's expanded the practice into studying how consumers make major lifestyle decisions, such as where to live or vacation, what colleges to attend, or how to spend their free time. As Kevin puts it, we're all consumers of something, and there's much more to be learned by understanding how humans make decisions. Outside of that, Kevin is an avid Muay Thai practitioner of 20 years and a writer on platforms such as Medium and LinkedIn. So Kevin is definitely a busy man. Thank you again, Kev.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I think the world of your program and both of you.
Thanks, Kevin. It comes a lot from you because I've been following you for, I would say, about 4 years. I think there was an article that came out. It was not the Medium. I think it was New York Times, and there was an article on how you did this amazing transformation on a company a few years back, and I've been following your articles ever since through Medium as well as LinkedIn. So it's a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It's great.
Absolutely. I want to understand, just like we do on this show, how did you get to where you are now, right? I think the audience will really resonate with your journey. So why don't you tell me about your calling? Like, what was it like to actually make that decision to start your business and then go down the path you are to who you are right now?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story that I think many people can relate to. I'm just like anybody out there. I had certain skills and certain things that I wasn't strong at and didn't know whether I'd be successful or not, but I certainly wanted to try. But I think all of us have a calling versus a job, and I think the hardest thing is to find that calling. I call it the acorn seed, and there's a blueprint written inside you that it's hard to see sometimes. It's buried, and you've got to work really hard to unwrap that acorn to find out what it wants to do and how it wants to evolve. And I think all of us, sometimes get great caretakers in life and sometimes don't. We get planted in good soil and bad soil, but no matter where you go in life, the DNA is written inside you. And we sometimes think it's our parents' responsibility to grow us up, but I actually believe it's our responsibility, and it's inside us to find that acorn seed. And so most of the time, those acorn blueprints can be found in your weird habits and behaviors. A lot of times our teachers or parents try to strip mine out those things that are odd about us, but it's actually the odd things that are really the most important things in life to focus on. And so I grew up in a family of newspaper publishers and everybody involved in ink and publications, but I was the only one that didn't want to go in that direction. And I decided to become an architect at 6 years old, which is such an odd calling. I had never met an architect, didn't know one. And I said, this is what I want to do with my life. And it took me a long time to kind of unravel why. And I say this is for the audience as well, is I think all of us we're mummified, and we have to unravel that mummy to get down to the core of what we're about. And my odd behavior was I would actually, I had a situation at home that won't go into all the details, but it was sometimes volatile and dangerous. And so what I would do is adjust the room, believe it or not. I would change the lighting levels and move the furniture around to try to calm the situation down and make everybody feel comfortable. And I thought that's what architecture was. I thought architecture was about helping influence or shape pro-social positive behaviors. And that's what I wanted to do with my life. And when I got into architecture school, it was much more about aesthetics and composition and scale and really an intellectual talkitecture pursuit. And so everybody was obsessed with style, and I was obsessed with behavior. And instead of asking clients what style architecture you wanted, I was very interested in saying, what kind of behaviors do you want? My teachers and dean didn't know what to do with me. They said, maybe you should be a sociologist or psychologist. And my response to them, and I wasn't cocky, I was, unsure of myself, but I was like, maybe architecture should be more like sociology. And the difference
How did they take that?
The difference I had in my mind was, instead of trying to take people to somewhere they don't want to go, such as Grey Poupon or Brie cheese, well, why don't you meet humans where they're at? And not everybody wants Grey Poupon. A lot of people want French's mustard, and a lot of people don't want opera. They want country music or rock and roll. And I was like, why don't you meet them where they're at and try to understand what their dreams are? Because not everybody wants to live in a glass house, and we all have hopes and dreams, and environment affects our behavior. So this is a long-winded answer, but I think it'll set the tone for this, is that I'm really happy that I pursued my calling and I didn't give up on it, even though there were a lot of forces, to get me to give up on it. Even my own self-confidence wanted to give up on it, but it wasn't it was my neurosis, really. And I never saw a business plan out of it. I never thought, oh, you're going to make money at it. I just thought, this is something I'm interested in. And so in 1992, after working for several other firms and doing well, I did well in those firms, but my business partner and I said, let's start a whole different practice, that studies how environment affects behavior and how people convene and how you can create pro-social behaviors. And we thought it would work for 5 people that we could employ, maybe 10 at tops, but it ended up working very well. And we have multiple offices, and we work not only across the United States, but overseas. And, what I'd say to the audience is you got to really get to those core things that drive you and those odd things. And so now I'll provide the shocker statement. And that is, I think we spend too much time trying to find out what makes us happy And I think that's really the wrong question. I remember Brad Pitt said something in his heyday.
Yeah.
He said happiness is overrated. And I thought, well, if that good looking guy with all that money and all the film can't be happy, why are any of us even trying? But really what I believe is more important is to find out what pisses you off. Find out what you'd cut another man's ear off over. That's the shocking statement I say that you might have to edit out. I don't know. But I say, find something you'd fight about. And the reason that is who wants to do something that you're not willing to fight for? And I have friends that'll fight over politics. I won't fight over politics. I have another friend who'd fight over the way shrimp cocktails served at an event. I'm not going to fight over that. But I will fight over how a place affects our environment and how an environment affects our behavior. And I think it's really key. And it's not an answer you'll get quick. I can't just ask you and you find out what pisses you off. I think it's something you have to think about. You have to think about for a while. That's part of your mummy project, is to unwrap that. So that's my super long answer, and I hope that was okay.
Sorry, Shawn. No, absolutely, that's okay. I'm curious to know, and probably Shawn's going to ask the same thing, which is, once you find what pisses you off, is it to fuel you, to challenge you so that you go in that direction? Like, because there's a lot of things that piss me off. So how do I know to focus and hone in on that? And Shawn, so go ahead if you want to ask something similar.
Yeah, just as you were saying that, Kevin, I could completely relate. Like, just this week alone, I came down hard on my developers because I saw the user adoption or the user experience might be impacted by this design, technology design. It was quite clunky. And I'm like, well, who's going to want to use this? We want to build user adoption. We want people to have an easy experience. So, and I was quite passionate, or I was pissed off about it, to use your words, Kevin. So as you say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's totally a reflection of my week.
What I think it really has to do is, I think we've gotten something really wrong here lately, particularly with this idea of everybody trying to make it. You know, we need to make it and get ourselves set up financially. And very few of us actually, quote, make it and don't have the toil of work. Toil of work is, you know, a part of life. It's been with us forever. And I work for super wealthy people, and they still toil and they still worry and fret. And so I think that this dream of chasing money and getting set up is a nightmare, and it's a way to really make yourself miserable. But I think what really is important is, would you be willing to do for free? What are you willing to do for that? You say, you know what, I'll do that for nothing. And so when I'm working hard. When I go on vacation, I'm doing the same thing as I work. I'm doing exactly the same thing because I love it. And when I go into a meeting and I have a competitor, I'm like, this is going to be great because I love a good axe to a sword to go against. And if you beat me, I take my hat off to you, but you better love it. You better love it as much as I do. And I'd say 80-90% of the time I can beat my competition because they don't love it as much as I love it. And they're not willing to fight for it. And I believe that when you have that fire of what you fight for, it's important. And to answer your question, Carl, about, how do you find exactly, I think it's very directional. And what I mean by that is I think initially it's not specific. I think the things that piss you off are kind of in a broad direction. And, this is going to sound really weird. What made me furious as a young person was restaurants. And I couldn't stand how a restaurant was designed. And this would be too long of a story, but when I was a kid, my parents would go out all the time. That they had a social responsibility to go out all the time, and I would stay at home by myself. And I was terrified. My brother would split as soon. He promised my parents he'd stay there, then he'd split. And I would watch. Back then there was only 3 channels, and I would watch old movies. I'd watch all the rock cuts and films and things, and they would all be going to these famous galas and balls dressed up, drinking. I'd never had a drink before, but I imagined the romance of what I called the dream of the enchanted evening. And to kind of numb my fear, I would just draw, and I'd be like, oh, I see a grand staircase like this. But I'd never been to a cocktail party until I was mid-20s or something, maybe later. So when I got ready to design my first restaurant, I already knew exactly what I wanted to do. I was in that direction. And I would get in fights with somebody. I'd get in fights with my clients over dumbing down the restaurant. I thought, how could you do that? Don't do something. Don't do a bathroom that ugly. And that wasn't my ultimate fate, but it got me down the path. And I wanted to make people feel beautiful. The joke used to say, I wanted to make bald-headed people feel hairy. I wanted to make fat people feel thin. I just wanted to make people feel beautiful in every moment of their restaurant experience and that enchanted evening. Because I figured, and this is how narcissistic kids are, I figured my parents, the only reason they would leave me at home is because they were going out to some enchanted evening. Why would they leave such a beautiful kid at home? They must be something really special. And so, but I wouldn't fight somebody over a parking deck or, like I said, a political party, or it's just not my thing. So if I can add to this, I'd say, how do you find out, I don't know if you've ever had to go to your in-laws or go to an event with somebody you didn't want to go to. You're like, I don't want to go to this thing. I don't want to go. And they go, and you kind of make this deal. You either say it out loud or you say it to yourself. You're like, well, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just letting you know, I'm not going to say anything. So then you go to this event and you're quiet. You don't say anything, and then somebody finally says something. You're like, I'm not going to take that. I'm going to
you jump right
put
in.
my 2 cents in on that.
Yeah.
Well, that 2 cents is where you need to start looking. You need to go, well, why did I feel like, despite the social manners and etiquette and decorum, that I just couldn't let that comment slide? That's when you start getting in that direction. And I can tell you 5 or 6 great little tiny stories about other people that found their calling, if and when you're ready at this time or another time. But I think once I tell you 2 or 3 more stories of how people find their calling, you'd be like, okay, I get it. It's what you care about and what you devote your life to. And a lot of people are afraid to do what they would fight for. We actually avoid everything we can not to do that thing we love the most. And if you were to ask me why, because we're afraid if we fail at that thing. Nothing worse than failing at your dream. Much easier to be a critic of your dream than to actually pursue your dream. And that's the big dare you have to make. You have to go, you know what, I'm going to go for it.
I think that's beautifully said. And the example you gave, it completely resonates with me, Kevin, because my kids know me for that, which is my head is always thinking process. I know when I got into the aspect of process design and transformation, it's from a personal journey I went through in healthcare. And then shortly after that, I worked in healthcare, a consultant for healthcare. So
fantastic.
Very similar to what you mentioned. I truly understand what you mean. And it doesn't turn off. You're absolutely right. It doesn't turn off on vacation or not on vacation. As a matter of fact, you're right. When you go into that restaurant, my wife and kids are like, okay, Carl, okay, Dad, I know you're thinking, why did it happen that way as opposed to that way? Because the process aspect of things doesn't turn off. So well said, understood.
I mean, who enjoys being around any business owner that doesn't love what they do? And it happens a lot where they go, who cares? I mean, I had a client say to me one time, I don't really care what you do, Kevin, as long as it sells more crap to more people more often. And I was just so disgusted. I was like, you probably shouldn't be doing this. You should do what you love. And he was a billionaire, And so I think it's really important to find what you really love and what you're willing to fight for.
I find, to add to that, or more like a question, I find that there's people with really great ideas or really passionate, but sometimes I'm inspired by your thought leadership. And I'm wondering, in my day-to-day, I get an opportunity to meet really wonderful people that might be a little more meek, but they have really creative insights. I was wondering, personally, how did your thought leadership and really the confidence to share your wisdom and insights, where did this emerge from? And, how can others aspire to be a thought leader in the way that you do? Any thoughts with that?
Yeah, there's kind of a couple of things. One was I was actually a pretty shy, I wasn't confident when I first started out and as an intern working, and I wasn't the one to be able to go out there and be really strong-minded. I was actually an observer, and I encourage people who are more quiet to actually use those power of observations. A lot of people go to work and kind of work, but I'm like, go to work as a sociologist. Take note of everything. Look at shoes, socks, the way people come in, and just start looking for patterns in the way people interact and what works and what doesn't work. How a person walks in a room, literally, how they stand. I just spent so many of my years observing. And I was just kind of studying them and what they do and putting together my thoughts on how it would actually ultimately come out. But I think what I realized in watching that, there's a number of principles, but the one thing I realized was the power of vulnerability and the power of revealing yourself more than anything. And it works for companies and individuals. Those people that are really powerful are the people that actually will show something about themselves and put it out there for others. You know, if you think about great comedians, they get up every day and they reveal themselves in a way that are so embarrassing, and we all laugh because it's a human truth. We only, you know, when you think about laughter, laughter isn't an intellectual thing. Laughter is an aha moment of going, oh my gosh, I do that. You know, we involuntarily laugh. And I thought, wow, there's something really about revealing yourself and having the courage to reveal. And so I started going to meetings, revealing myself. But I will say this, I think each of us has a different genius level of how we communicate. Some of us communicate through writing, some of us through verbal, some of us through drawings, you know, some of us through business plans. There's a lot of different ways some of us through numbers or musical geniusness or interpersonal geniusness. And I think it is important to first find how you communicate best and how you shine and work on that first. And so I don't consider myself a writer, even though I'm trying to learn to write, but I always did write, if that makes sense. And I wrote a lot as a young person. And, you know, one product that is an essential part of what I do now is I started writing for my clients when I was an intern. I started writing the problem they were trying to solve. I would write these little books that were 5,000 words long about what's the problem you're trying to solve. And you might say, as opposed to what? I found the world has a lot of solutions in search of a problem. And I find that what we don't have is a lot of brilliantly, profoundly stated problem statements. And so that's what I started focusing on. And I'm like, I still believe to this day, your solution will be as brilliant as your problem definition. And if you aren't getting the solution you want, it probably has something to do with the solution. I mean, if you're not getting a solution, it probably has something to do with the problem. And I don't like, you know, picture does say 1,000 words. I want to say 4 words. And I want to create that aha moment. And so I started writing as my first kind of way to develop myself as a thought leader. And you know, at a later juncture, you know, we could talk about how does that translate into marketing and other things. Because when I started a company, we were just co-founded, we were 2 people, you know, and so I've never had a marketing director, I've never had a professionally presented brochure. So I had to figure out how to get myself out there. And again, we can chat about that later about how to do that for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's tackle that now. That's something I want to know selfishly, and of course my audience wants to know. But how is it that you used? I mean, the problem statement is one tactic and trait. What else do you use, and do you apply that and work with that with some of your clients, like retail? How do you prepare them to go from a retail to an online? Those kind of transformations. Let me hear more about that.
Yeah, I'll give you kind of 2 tracks here. You know, when we started out, I started out in the South, which is a beautiful territory. It's a very thick culture, and it has a lot of established kind of hierarchies. And it's very hard to break through those hierarchies when you're just 2 people. And we didn't have any money, and, you know, we weren't in the right part of town. And, didn't have any facilities hardly. We had extension cords and rickety tables and leftover furniture, and we had to try to figure out how to build a practice. And there's I call them 5 spinning plates, and I've written an article on this, but the 5 spinning plates that I believe an entrepreneur with no money has to kind of use to fight the giants is I think you have to find ways to be seen, and I mean visually seen. So literally think about the wardrobe of your company, the logo, the image. Most people tend to do exactly what the other company's already doing. They emulate it and they just try to make it bigger. And bigger looks more amateur, smaller looks more confident. And so the first thing I did was try to be seen. I wanted to be heard. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but I needed to find a way that people would listen to me. And I'll get to that in just a moment. I wanted to be different. And so every single thing that a company does, a Christmas party, we did a Valentine's party instead. Monday morning meetings, we just said, don't do Monday morning meetings. All we were doing is emulating and aping these other companies. So we kept trying to think, let's just take everything you do and do it differently. So I and I don't know if I remember these off the top of my head, but be seen, be heard, be read, be different. And I can't remember my last one all of a sudden off the top of my head, but let's talk about be heard. I think it's very important if you're an entrepreneur or a company, whether you're young or mature, that you're a spokesperson for something, an advocate for something, a critic for something. And we had no experience, no portfolio, but what I started doing was really becoming an advocate for what I believe in, that environment affects behavior. And it was kind of what I call my theory on the market. Or another way to say this, and again, there's an article on this you can look at, is I believe all companies need to go, how is the world out of balance? What's wrong with the world now? And how can I, or my ideas, put it back in balance? And if you go to lunch with anybody, they'll tell you what the world needs. It's just when you put them on the business spot, they go, I don't know. But you go to lunch and people are like, this is what the world needs. Well, it is our duty and obligation as entrepreneurs to figure out, how do I put the world back in balance? What is it that it needs? And in my world, I wanted to stop modern aesthetic, object-oriented architecture, and I wanted to create more socially facilitated architecture. I wanted places that made people feel beautiful and engendered the right kinds of behaviors, and I wanted to save my clients. So with all that said, I started writing first, but more than anything, I started speaking. And my speaking gigs were nothing in the beginning, but they got better and better and better. And I have a formula for how I speak. I've written about 4 articles on how you get started in the speaking circuit and why it's so important, because you're putting your platform out there and you're only attracting those interests to your platform versus traditional marketing where you're selling. Speaking is a pull strategy. It only pulls those interests. The people that come up and see you after are ones that are interested in what you do. And that to me is the way you can go 30 years, as we've done, with a 0 budget marketing strategy. So we have no money in marketing.
Along those lines as well, like I'm wondering, just in terms of like human behavior and social interaction and your astute insight into it, as we all know, we've been going through the pandemic, opening, closing, things like that. It's definitely having an impact on society in a variety of different ways. I'm wondering from your vantage point, especially as it manifests in design, what do you foresee in children? How would they be impacted in the future as our social interaction norms change, and that influence on like our future work?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a very interesting time. I've spent most of my career looking at the intersection where commerce and community meet. I'm not trying to do retail to manipulate humans. I'm not interested in that. I fundamentally believe that the markets, the bazaars, the ancient agoras, the grocery store, the high streets are where people meet and interact. It's where you learn about strangers and you come in contact with things that are different than you. And it's very important. And this pandemic has provided an opportunity for our firm to really study in much more detail the kind of cognitive impairment that staying at home has done for us. And, the way we remember our memories is through differentiated experiences. And when you don't have differentiated experiences, when you're in the same familiar environment day in and day out, you start to lose track of memory. It's kind of what we call sensory deprivation. And it's a real physical, biological state. And it's very important for us as humans to use our brains and our senses to go out and have new and different experiences. So it's very important that we activate our senses and that we stimulate them, because it helps keep our mental chops good. And a very dangerous thing to do to adults, and much more dangerous to the kids, is not to have their senses activated. So this is our biggest concern, is that kids aren't getting their sensory activation, sensory development skills. And if you think about it, your language, all of our language, when we describe people, we use physical words to describe people. After this session, people might say Kevin's slick, or he's rough on the edges, or he's tough as nails, or he's hard-headed. These are real physical qualities. And that is how we develop our language, is through this symbolic, metaphoric thing. And so it's very important to us. And the second thing that's really important to us is really being around strangers, being around people of different sorts than us. And so the ancient agora, the market bazaars, when you'd have spices coming from across the world and merchants come from other places, and you didn't go there to just buy things. You went there to learn and discover and be enlightened and to be a part of an adventure, to find your date or a husband or a wife. I mean, this has been the history of civilizations coming together. And so, yeah, I'm concerned about it. The one good thing that's happening, though, no matter what, is there's such a deficit for these experiences that people are getting out. They're gonna get out and have those experiences no matter what, because that's how we're wired as a species. While Facebook and internet's evolving at warp speed, human beings aren't evolving. We haven't changed in hundreds of thousands of years. We walk forward, we don't walk sideways. We use our senses to make decisions. And the last point I'd say on that is, if you're a business, the most important thing you can do is to figure out how to get your idea, your concept, your value proposition into the consumer's mind through their senses first. Start with that. And that doesn't mean you actually have to smell it, because when I go see a film, I don't actually have to smell the fire or the bullets. You have to make me feel that. And start with the senses first. That's the most powerful way to get an idea in the head, and then you can get it intellectually later. And we have tons of studies on this, that we observe.
It's funny that you brought this up about getting the idea in their head, because the first person I started to look for was your articles. And the reason being is because I've been looking at some of the projects you work with retail, and the emphasis of experience, right? The user experience, the user journey as they navigate within the retail store. And as soon as COVID hit, I was thinking, what would you do now? Like, what are some of the things that your clients are saying, okay, well, as a result of that, here's how we have to pivot, or here's how we need to now think of experience differently. And you laid it out for me just now, but I'm also want to know, are people doubling down now? Is it, like you said, the experience now, people want that experience? Is there a different kind of experience that your clients are looking at now or considering? Or are they saying, hey, you've done it now for these past clients, can you do the same for me? Because now I'm really emphasizing on the whole aspect of the journey and the user journey and experience when they're in my store, let's say.
Yeah, there's certainly a heightened awareness around germs and around sharing touching surfaces, so there's certainly that consciousness. And but we've had other scares in our lives before. We've had polio, and there were it took a long time for polio to be resolved, and there were all kind of myths about it. We had AIDS and SARS, and other types of pandemics that have on a much smaller level. And it's sad to say, memories get weak. And the AIDS crisis, there was a lot of freaking out, but then later sex got out of hand again, and sexually transmitted diseases went off the charts again with apps like Tinder and other things that created a social epidemic, really. And so our memories are short, despite how shocking things are. So that as much as we think this is going to last forever, it won't. Our generations will probably remember it the most, but people have such a need to be around other people, right. That you see it already right now, that they're just gonna be together no matter what. And so when it comes to the retailers, we're looking at things, and I'll use a very specific example. You know, we took the salad bars out of our grocery stores because we thought they were germ causing, or we didn't take them out, we shut them down, and customers bolted. They're like, no, wow. Not every customer, but a certain type of customer, a healthy customer that wears Lululemon pants and, you know, has a certain lifestyle, said, no, I want to make my own salad. So then we had to think of other ways. So we actually created attendants to wash the things down and to do things after each usage. And what you'd see is it's the perception of safety. It's not always a reality of it. So just seeing a person with a squirt bottle or smelling Lysol are things that we ordinarily wouldn't have associated with food, but now we're looking for those pivotal cues and triggers. And I'm not suggesting they be fake, but I'm also stating that people aren't going to be as thorough as you think about these things. And so they're determined to use those salad bars. And I could go on and on with other examples, but you know, we had been building bars and restaurants and other types of things in grocery stores prior to the pandemic. We're still building those. We're still building those. The only thing we're allowing for is more flexible options in case we can't use them, in case the government shuts us down. So we're finding other ways to use them. But we foresee, and our clients foresee, a much bigger appetite to get together, like a celebration, you know, for people to come together. But it is definitely something we're all looking at, you know. Oddly enough, though, for what it's worth, we have different clients, but our grocery clients are double indexing during this pandemic because, and not from delivery, because customers really value the store, their local store, to go into it. It's a passion, you know, project for them to go in the store.
Yeah, I can imagine brand recognition at that time, or now at this time, means something much more.
Yeah, and food, celebrating with food and with others. And we've rebirthed and kicked off a whole new trend of people enjoying eating at home and spending time with friends and showing off their cooking skills. We haven't seen that. We started to lose that, but it's coming back in a big way, which is nice, you know, that bonding. And if anything kind of died that we're seeing, and I suggest this for all my clients, you know, is that vanity, materialism, showing off, individuality even is on its way out for now. And community and bonding and family and togetherness is really in. And so there are brands that are kind of tonally off right now because they're still selling power, sex, individuality, and it's shifted now. And people are grateful for what's happened and for the bonding, I should say. They're grateful that they're coming together and they're looking for ways. And you see it in the numbers, right? Home renovations, patio, barbecue, pool, all of this is just skyrocketing, which has been exciting, you know, to see. That's what's fascinating, I think, about the world of retail, is that it's always changing and it's hard to predict. And I think a lot of people want to think about retail as a fixed mindset, but once you get static, you're in trouble. You need to stay fluid, and it is the fashion of the times. And retail is a reflection of what people are thinking about. And if you're going to run a retail company, you better have some people that understand fashion and know how to create demand. And we tend to have in retail companies too many supply side thinkers, which is an important part, but you really need to have demand side thinkers at the top who are really in touch with the fashion of the times, the topics of conversation that are always going on. And there's not 50 conversations, there's generally around 6 going on at any given time. And it's very important to be in touch with those.
And you've given a lot of great insights, especially around just people. And it makes so much sense. We are, as you're explaining, I am feeling more of a togetherness or a desire for togetherness, just having been absent from it for like almost going on 2 years now. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also the sensories as well. I am more inspired by things that I see visually that I can sense, or if I read something and I can immediately, it tingles my senses.
Yeah, I should have said this earlier because we think about this all day long, and as you can see, I could talk about it all day long too much. But one of the reasons is, why do we like to be around people? And my thesis and my belief and my research, it really says that we learn from other people. We learn how to be a dad or a mom. We learn how to be a granddad. We learn how to be a teen. We learn how to go on dates by observing. And we take it for granted, but when we show up to the skating rink as a teen, or the partier, we're looking at, what is that person wearing? Oh, he's holding her hand. Okay, he's holding her hand. He brought her flowers. This is how we learn how to behave as humans. And we've been doing this for, thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. What scares me and what's terrifying is if we learn our behaviors online, if we learn them through Twitter, or we learn them through other things. And I'm not against Twitter. What happens is, when we don't see each other face to face, we say things to each other we would never say. Yeah. And we polarize ourselves in very divisive ways that is very dangerous to civilization. And that's because there's, we all know that, right? We've all made the mistake of writing a text or an email we shouldn't have done, when we go, I would never say that person up front. Or we misread signals. And that's because we're observing each other. We make a decision about a person very fast. Is that person a threat or an enhancement to my life? And it's very important for us to see and be around each other. And I believe that social discourse, social conversation has been suffering tremendously because we're not coming together. And it started before the pandemic, and that we were terrified to let our kids outside because they're going to be kidnapped or something's going to happen to them. So we put them in their rooms, and they started using cell phones and iPads and Netflix, and then they don't want to leave. Right. But we need them to get out. Social chops, social skills is no different than playing guitar, right? Or, you have to practice, you have to learn it. Even people now in our research, during the pandemic, they're like, wow, I haven't been around people in a while. I forgot how to behave or how to dress, and I took my wife out to a district one day. She's like, oh my God, I didn't expect to run into somebody. I'm like, well, that's what happens. And so this is important. This is the kind of important fiber that holds us together. And so I at a much deeper level, I'm scared for a society that doesn't come together. And this is where retail plays a role. We need a device to bring us together, because we could go to parks and mountains and lakes, but that's a passive experience. We need active engagement with other human beings, not just animals or trees and rivers. We need engagement with people from different walks. That's going to be what is the foundation of making us a better society and a friendlier, deeper, more humane society. We need to kind of put down the Twitter sometimes and just get out and interact with somebody different.
Agreed. Yeah, totally agree. She's like, we all have a part to play in reconnecting and reestablishing social engagement. Yeah. So this has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm wondering, Kev, like, how can people follow you and learn more about your journey and hear more of your thoughts and insights?
Well, I'm old enough that about 3 years ago, I was hoping to be able to go through this whole life without ever having social media, but it made people suspicious and uncomfortable. They were like, I don't know, he's scary, you can't find him. So I can't remember, I think about 2 years ago, I joined LinkedIn and started figuring it out. And I write a lot on LinkedIn daily under Ervin Kelley, that's Ervin, and Kelley is Kelley. And then I also write on a platform called Medium, same name, Ervin Kelley. And if you can believe it or not, 2 days ago, pretty scary here, I joined Instagram. So I think Instagram closed down their marketing recruiting office because they're done now. They've got me aboard, and they don't need to get any. I'm the last human being to join Instagram. So I'm learning that platform, and I think that's it. I think I'm done.
Okay.
But I'm learning to write, and I don't really know how to write. And I definitely talk, and I apologize if my answers are way too long for all of your questions.
Not at all. Not at all. Fascinating discussions. And I follow you on 2 of them. So Medium and LinkedIn. I'll follow you on IG now.
Oh, that's
so
scary.
you have to say IG just
yeah,
so
no,
that
I just learned that.
Yeah.
I just learned that. And it's funny. My wife she has well over 120,000 followers, and she is a social media star, and I know nothing about it. And she has a company called Posery that's worth seeing. But anyway, she really knows it, but I know nothing about it. And so I'm just learning. And so last night she was trying to explain to me the difference between a story and a reel and a post. And I'm like, what? I can't understand this.
Well, I do it, but when I travel, whether it's work or just personal, I take pictures because I used to be a photographer back in the day.
Oh, great.
I still am. So that's what I use it for, is to post on that. But I have to get better at it. But where I would ask you is, where I'd ask you is, jumping off from some of the things that you mentioned about personal interaction. Let us know if you have any lectures coming up, because if you're writing articles, you're going to write a book, you don't have to answer now, but please let us know. We would love to be a part of it. If it's any sessions that you would have, or we would love to share with our audience too. So please. Yeah,
definitely have some stuff coming up, and I'll be the first to let you guys know, and or you'll be the first that I'll let know. And I want to thank you for letting me be a part of this. You guys are wonderful, and what a great program. And I'm excited to learn more about all that you have going on.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Ken.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely our pleasure. And Carl, as always, so I guess just for our audience, that's there you have it. This is a brand new episode of As Is To Be, and we've had the privilege of learning so much from Kevin Kelley. Definitely reach out to him and follow him on LinkedIn, on IG recently.
Please teach me IG, and be gentle on me though, okay?
Carl, as always, brother, it's been a peach.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And to our audience out there, as always, stay cool, everybody. And remember, you can live your life as is, or you can chase a dream of where you want your future to be. Peace.
Peace.
Love it.